Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend.
Welcome to the ControllerCast. My name is Ursula. I'm joined by John and Andrew this week. Parker sadly could not make it. He had some shit going on, so it's just going to be the three of us this week. How was your guys' week? Maybe I'll start off actually. I've been kind of going through a movie phase recently. Just been trying to go through a bunch of movies that I've wanted to watch in the past few years and I haven't gotten around to them, or specifically the Oscar kind of season films, like Best Picture nominees. So been continuing that streak from last week, and nothing really crazy going on in my personal life, but just been watching a lot of movies, I guess. What about you, Andrew?
It's been going pretty good, getting settled into my new apartment. Doing some March Madness brackets. Currently sitting at the top of my tournament challenge I'm in, so I'm pretty psyched about that. Hopefully we keep it up. Go Illini. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just been watching basketball, playing through Paper Mario actually. So that's quite
How was
the
Paper
game.
Mario?
It's pretty good. It's like an RPG, so there's a battle system. The battle system's hot ass, but the game itself is really good. The writing is really funny, and it's got pretty good RPG tactic style stuff. So I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I've actually been doing pretty good too. I'm in the same tournament challenge as Andrew, and I'm in second right now. So doing pretty good there. Nothing too crazy has been going on in my personal life besides planning a wedding. Obviously, that's always in my head. Got my wedding ring this week, and I'm super excited about it. What I've been doing with my time, though, my fiance and I have been playing Super Mario 3D World, and that game is a gem. I recommend anyone that has a Nintendo Switch pick that up, because it's if you legit want to play through it and collect everything, it's going to take you a good 30 hours. So it's definitely worth 60 in my opinion. But yeah, I've been really enjoying that lately. I know Andrew's been playing that. Been trying to get Arsenal on it, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd highly recommend that game. It's a fantastic game that isn't really. It's kind of underrated, I feel.
It is, and I hope that with the Switch release, a lot more people pick it up.
It's kind of crazy that it's so highly regarded, and I feel like it completely went under the radar when it came out. Maybe because it's such a stacked year.
I mean, it was one of the best-selling games on the Wii U, but the Wii U obviously failed.
That's the
problem.
Yeah, but hey, I guess there's 70 million more people with the Switch, so there's gonna be a lot more people checking it out. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the main topics, or the current event topics of the week. Andrew, I know you wanted to go ahead and kick this whole thing off, so take it over.
All right, so probably as many of you are familiar if you watched any part of the Super Bowl, since it was on every commercial break since CBS was carrying it. Paramount Plus has started picking up steam. I picked up a 1-month free trial. I used it for 30 minutes and I canceled the subscription. I don't really know why Paramount Plus exists, if I'm being 100% honest. Probably out of all the streaming services I've used, so I have what do I have right now? I have Netflix, Hulu, YouTube TV, Discovery Plus, and Showtime. And Paramount Plus is by far the worst out of any of them that I've ever used. I don't know what you're watching on there. They have SpongeBob and iCarly. If I was 10, this would be a banger streaming service. But as a 22-year-old human being, those do not appeal to me anymore. Neither do the CBS shows that they're putting on, Young Sheldon. I don't know who the hell would watch that.
Oh, that's on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, it is. And their originals not looking so hot. I don't really know why it exists. So that brings me to my bigger topic, that I think there are too many streaming services. I do not think that it is efficient for everybody to have their own. While I get it from like a money stance, because all these individual companies want to make the most money they can, so they're not going to like bundle it, obviously. But I feel like it's getting to the point. I hear people go, "Oh, there's so many streaming services that cable is." We might as well just get cable. Well, no. The reason that the streaming services are getting popular is because you can watch them on your phone or on your laptop or anywhere you are. That's the problem. That's why people dropped cable in the first place, because you have to be next to a box that's hooked into your house on a big TV. And, I mean, as far as I know Cox had, like, an app where you could watch it on the go, but you had to be connected to Wi-Fi and be in, like, the same area as your house. You could only watch it inside your house. Kind of defeats the entire purpose of being able to watch stuff on your phone in the first place. So I just wanted to get, I wanted to see, what you guys' thoughts were on the whole streaming thing. Maybe Arsenal. I know both of you guys use, HBO Max, and you guys use a ton of streaming services. So maybe Arsenal. I don't know what your thoughts are first off.
So yeah, I'm in the exact same boat where it feels extremely cyclical to something like cable, where everyone thought that's something like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, like kind of some of the more for the earlier streaming services, that they would be the future and they'd be the monopoly, which like on entertainment. But I don't think anyone thought that, or maybe it would kill cable. I'm not totally sure. I think that was a thought that a lot of people had, but I think it is becoming like cable now instead of something that's supposed to replace it, where there's just so many streaming services. It is just turning into a la carte, an a la carte cable ownership, which is silly because it's, I don't know. I think some of these streaming services could probably merge with each other and create a more interesting product. That's what Hulu was at the start. It was a bunch of companies coming together and creating a streaming service. And I don't get why more organizations aren't doing that, because, is there anyone out there that really has like Paramount Plus and HBO Max and like has every single streaming service? I have most, but I don't have all of the ones that are out there because there's just so goddamn many. So I wish they could consolidate in some way.
I think it was an interesting thing that you said, Arcel, when you said that it's like an a la carte cable now, because I totally agree. I mean, if you were to get each and every streaming service that's out, and I have just about every one, I'm at about $70 a month, and that's for Netflix, Hulu, Prime, HBO Max, I know I'm forgetting, Disney Plus, and Discovery Plus. And if I were to add Paramount Plus to that, I might as well go back to cable, because you almost get everything that you would get in a streaming service in cable, besides maybe certain movies on demand. But I think it's getting to the point where it is a bit too much. I mean, Paramount, like, how did they get the rights to the Nickelodeon stuff?
I mean,
did Paramount produce?
They have it because of Viacom. They own Viacom. CBS owns Viacom.
Okay.
Because I think.
Well, then what is like CBS All Access or whatever? Like, what is that?
That's what Paramount Plus
it
is
turned
now.
into Paramount
CBS All Access. Yeah, they got rebranded and put out as Paramount Plus.
Okay, fair enough. Because I thought those two were separate. But yeah, I mean, I like what they have to offer at this point. I think Discovery Plus is my favorite. But I think to your point, Arcel, on like, why don't they combine and, create some super streaming service, is just because there's not enough money for it. I mean, I'm not exactly sure how the revenue stream works for these and like how they pay the producers and everyone that's involved in the movies and TV shows, but I would think like a $15 or $20 streaming service that would include like 3 of them probably wouldn't generate enough revenue for the entertainment companies and people involved. But it would be an interesting idea to see happen. But I think that streaming services were a good idea, but at this point it is getting ridiculous, and it's only a matter of time before we see the next one.
Yeah, like I'm kind of curious where, like, what's the next step? Like, there's gonna be a point where the bubble bursts and there's just too many streaming services, you know?
I think Paramount Plus was that,
Yeah.
for me at least.
Or like, what's
Yeah,
what's gonna be the first streaming service that like shuts down? You know, like there's gonna be one that falls.
true,
I feel like.
true. Yeah, I think for sure, like John said, Paramount Plus. After using it, I mean, they the reason I really got it is because it was like, oh, watch March Madness, all the games. Well, I sign up for it, open it up, you can only watch one game at a time. Okay, well, this is worthless. I'm just gonna go back to YouTube TV where I can watch all four whenever I want. Because they have 4 different channels carrying March Madness games. I'm not gonna watch one at a time when I could watch 4 at a time.
Exactly.
It's goofy, but anyways, it's just the world we live in, I guess. So speaking of streaming services, I think John wanted to take it off on a big title dropping on HBO Max this week.
Yeah. So HBO Max I really like for this, and the fact that they're releasing movies that would be in the theater is a really, really good idea. And I think it's really going to benefit them in the long run. But this week, for my current event, I'm going to be talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League. So this is a long one. It's a long film. I had never seen the first one, but I've looked at reviews. Right. I had never seen the original cut. I was going to try and get around to it this week, but after watching the 4-hour Zack Snyder cut, I was like, nah. So, yeah, like I said, I've never seen the first one, but I've seen a lot of the reviews, and the reviews make it seem like it wasn't too hot. So I wasn't really sure what to expect going into this, but like I said, the movie's 4 hours, so it's quite the doozy, but it doesn't feel that long. I mean, it's split into 6 chapters and an epilogue. It's set after the events of Batman v Superman, where Bruce Wayne is gathering the different members of what we know as the Justice League to fight the biggest threat in the universe. 3 ancient objects called Mother Cubes are on Earth, where each race of being, the Amazons, Atlanteans, and man, have one each, and they must keep it from an evil race of beings that have destroyed thousands, I think even hundreds of thousands of worlds, with the supervillain Darkseid as like the evil puppeteer behind it. I didn't have super high hopes for the movie coming in, but I was honestly so pleasantly surprised. I thought it was much more tame than a Marvel movie, and it didn't try to be one, which definitely helped its case. It was a more dark and serious movie, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ursel, but I didn't get a lot of comedic relief from it. But I think this played very well for the overall feel of the film. Like, it really sets the tone of the story and makes it feel like a unique superhero film for me. I mean, this movie really makes me excited to see what Snyder has planned for the DCCU, I guess would be the way to say it. So, Arsel, maybe you can kick off what your thoughts are on Zack Snyder's cut. I know that you made it through the 4 hours. Can you tell me a little bit about actually the differences between this one and the original, since I didn't get to see the original before the Zack Snyder cut?
Yeah, so I'm coming in with a little bit of a different background with this film compared to John, where I actually did see the original cut. I actually didn't watch it until I found out that the Snyder Cut was coming out. So I had never seen it up until mid to late 2020. But going from there, I think this movie is just such a talking point right now, because I don't think we've ever seen a situation in Hollywood where the director's cut or the extended cut, whatever it might be, is borderline a completely different film from what the theatrical cut was. We just talked about Blade Runner a few weeks ago. There's the Lord of the Rings extended cuts. those are all, like relatively the same film, but minor tweaks or additional scenes. Whereas with this cut of the film, the Snyder Cut, compared to the original cut, the tone of the entire film is completely different. There's different plot lines, different characters. The original cut is only 2 hours long, and not even 2 hours. I think it's an hour and 59 minutes, and this version of the film is 4 hours and 2 minutes. And like what John said, this version of the film is a lot more serious. It takes itself very, very seriously. There's very little comedic relief. The only character that you really even get comedic relief through is the Flash, and even that's very few and far between compared to the original cut, which was directed by Joss Whedon, who directed the first two Avengers films, actually, Avengers and Age of Ultron. So it had a very similar vibe to those films, where it was very comedic, kind of goofy, and that's just not the direction that I think that the whole DC EU up until that point was going. If you see Man of Steel or Batman versus Superman, those are very serious films, so it only made sense for Justice League to be more serious. I think I have problems with this film in the sense that I think the first half of the film is very meandering and kind of aimless. It's just the first half really felt like to me of kind of just a random collection of events. I think from there though, the second half is a lot stronger than the first half. Also, I think the last 20 minutes of the film are completely unnecessary. I don't think this was a spoiler, but stuff like the Joker scene that's in the trailers and stuff like that, like I thought was completely like pointless, didn't even need to be there.
Right.
But those are kind of my general thoughts with the film. I don't know if you wanted to respond to anything I said, John.
Yeah, I thought that the whole Joker thing, as Casey and I were watching this, I mean, we got to the epilogue and we're like, I mean, without spoiling too much, I guess, but we got to the epilogue and we're like, where's the Joker? We haven't seen him yet. Not that we really want to.
Yeah, it's okay. Like, remember, this is goddamn Jared Leto's Joker, who just sounds
Jared
like
Leto's Joker.
He just sounds like he's doing a Jim Carrey impression.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Jared Leto's Joker is very good. I think he truly could have been left out of the movie because the epilogue for me, besides maybe the very end of it, could have been left out. And that kind of leads me to my biggest issue with the film was just that it was a little too long. I mean, it was an epic, but 4 hours is long for any movie. I mean, and there were parts, like you had mentioned, Arcel, kind of in the beginning where it seems like a random collection of events, and I feel like they could have shortened it and maybe made it a little more cohesive so that it felt more like maybe Infinity War, where everyone was kind of collectively leading up to an event rather than everyone doing their own completely separate thing and then all of a sudden they're together.
Yeah.
It didn't feel quite as cohesive to me throughout.
Like, just kind of like, yeah, going off of what you said, I just wanted to make sure I mention this, like the length, right? I want people to know, like, if in a reality where Snyder stayed on the original cut and made his version of the film, that movie, if that got released in 2017 as the theatrical cut, it would not have been 4 hours. Like, I know a lot of people out there are thinking that this is like what the original film was genuinely going to be. I don't think so. I really think, like, going off of what John's point was, where this film's too long, like, yes, the 2 hour cut of this film that came out in 2017 is way too short and very nonsensical. But I also think this one is a little too self-indulgent and goes on for too long. A lot of an obnoxious amount of slow motion scenes, by the way. But
I was gonna say the same.
And but I think the perfect cut of this movie is sitting somewhere around the 3 hour mark. that I just wanted to. That's all. That's the main thing I wanted to say. Talking about going off of your length comment.
I would agree, and I think if they could like kind of make the whole first half of the movie a little more cohesive and connecting, then that perfect 3-hour cut could be like potentially a 9 or above, or a 10 out of 10 even, because I think that like the overarching story to this is really, really good for a superhero film, and it's honestly more than what a lot of people could ask for, in my opinion, which kind of leads me to my ranking of the film. I would give it an 8.5 out of 10, and most of my complaints would come from the length and the fact that it's not as cohesive. But like I said, I really like the whole story of it. I mean, if you like Infinity War and Endgame, you're honestly gonna like this a lot, because it's kind of a similar plot, but I mean, it came out first. It was before Infinity War, and it's a very similar plot. So if you enjoyed that and you enjoy the DC universe, you're gonna love this movie. And if you like superhero movies in general, you're gonna love this. And before I get to Arsel's rank, because I know that you could talk on that, Andrew, do you think, I know you didn't get to watch it, but would you, maybe reignite the HBO Max subscription to watch this anytime soon?
Personally, probably not. First of all, just because of how long it is. Also, I did see it was in a 4:3 video format, I believe.
It is.
Which is incredibly frustrating. Even just seeing like screenshots people put on Twitter, it's just like, like in 2021, I expect everything to obviously be 16:9. I probably would just not have. I'm not gonna watch it. I don't think I would have a fun time watching it. I feel like if they fix the video formatting, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm a very visual person, so like stuff like just little stuff like that's just super. I would be thinking about that the whole time rather than the actual movie. So I will not be watching this.
I did actually forget to comment on that, but the 4:3 aspect ratio was a small complaint for me, but I don't think that it detracted from the quality of the film. I think in some cases it might have helped it, and I know that this movie was intended to be probably viewed in IMAX, and it was filmed with IMAX cameras, which are 4:3. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ursel, but
yeah, that's
but
like that's like when you go to the theater. That's like how it's set up, but it's just that's how the screen ready is. So that's why you're not seeing black bars if you're seeing it in IMAX.
So to be fair, we're not missing out on anything visually. In fact, we're getting more of it because it's not the 16:9. It was a little bothersome. I would have preferred it to fill up the whole TV screen, and I just think that's a little more immersive. But then again, it was supposed to be in IMAX. We're in interesting times. It might be in IMAX still. But Arsel, what did you think about the aspect ratio? And then did you want to give your rating on the film?
Yeah. So, I'm going to just kind of give my encompassing thoughts of this film with the 4:3. I think the 4:3, and honestly, this whole movie is the whole world really getting to see like a creative, just, like this is his project. We really got to see, okay, we're giving full control to Zack Snyder here. Let's see what his artistic vision, what he gives us with his artistic merits and artistic vision. I think seeing that contrasted with essentially the corporate mandated, original cut, it's crazy. It's really insane to see. It's really insane to see how something can change so much in the editing process, because it really is insane. This is these are the same actors, same general story, the same big points really, but editing changes and swapping out of scenes can make the world of difference. And I think that alone is like why this movie will be remembered. Because we've never seen, I think, cuts of the same movie be so different. However, just because it's his like artistic integrity, like really being shown in full display, he's given full control back. That I don't think that is still enough to be like this movie is amazing or anything, because it's not, in my opinion. But I still think this movie is a lot better than the original cut. Like in this film, you know, compared to the original cut, like in this one, we actually get to see an arc for Cyborg. Wonder Woman isn't sexualized all the time. We get to see like the black suit of Superman, because that wasn't in the original cut. It's a more serious film, so it's more consistent in tone with the other DC films. It's you know, it's sticking true to its vision instead of trying to copy Marvel. So those are all the things that make me appreciate it more than the original. I will say one final thing before I give my score. If anyone's watching this review and then going to go watch the film, just know that every single time Wonder Woman shows up on the screen, it does this like Amazonian like scream, and
Every single time.
Yeah. And I noticed it about an hour in, and I started laughing every time I noticed it, and it was kind of immersion breaking. But I've said it now, and there's no way you can see that or hear that if you watch this movie. But yeah, let me go ahead and give my score. I was originally, honestly, like I would give the original like a 4, which just to make it clear, for me, like 1 to 4 out of 10 is bad. I think a 5 is average, completely middle of the line. I think 6 is decent to a slightly above average. I think 7 is good. That's good range. I think 8 is great. And then 9, you're probably looking at like amazing, like 9 to 9.5. Like it's just amazing, one of the best. Or amazing, you know, maybe one of the best of the generation or best of the past few years, something like that. And then 10 to me is a masterpiece, which we talked about last week. So with that in mind, I was originally going to give it like a 6 to 6.5, but I think I think at the end of the day, give it a little bit higher of a score because it's such an unprecedented event in Hollywood, I think. So I'm going to give it a 7. So I think putting our scores together, like we're probably looking at a 7.8 for us.
Yeah, just about.
So yeah, there you go. And that, I'm glad we talked about that. But I'll go ahead and take it off with my general topic, or my few topics, which is going back to the world of gaming, some PlayStation stuff. So I have 2 stories that I kind of want to go into. And Sony has been just dropping bombs and after bombs with like news stories, I feel like.
Sony's going nuts.
Yeah. So first off, they announced that they were backing up a newly founded independent studio in Canada called Haven Studios, and it's being head by Jade Raymond, who was there for the creation of like Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs. She was in Ubisoft during a very golden time. Then she went to EA Motive Studios and helped make Battlefront 2 and Star Wars Squadrons, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. And then she went to Stadia, didn't make a single game there, and now she's here at Haven Studios, her new studio, and she's being funded to make a PlayStation exclusive. So I just wanted to start off with that first story and ask you guys, what do you guys think about this story? What do you guys think about Jade Raymond being involved, Sony backing it up? Maybe John, you want to start off?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can only be a good thing for Sony. I mean, we talked about exclusives a little bit last week. I know we all have our different opinions on that. Parker's not as into them. I think that exclusives are a good thing and a good thing for competition in the market in general. But I'm really excited to see what Jade has planned for an exclusive on PlayStation. I think that it could be, you know, as good as maybe the original Assassin's Creed games. I mean, Assassin's Creed used to be a golden game, and it was one of, like, the most exciting releases back in the early 2010s. So for me, I think it could only be a good thing for Sony. The more resources they have at their disposal and the more creative talent and visionaries they have on their side, the better it's going to be for not only Sony, but the market in general, because competition is good for the consumer. The more competition there is, the better games we're all going to have. Andrew, what were your thoughts on that?
I remember the Assassin's Creed, how whether you feel like it's tapered off or not, I think everybody can agree. When it first started, the first few games they put out were pretty good. I played through Assassin's Creed 3, and I've watched 1 and 2 to some length. So, I mean, it's got me excited if she can pull that stuff in, because I mean, she worked on Battlefront 2, like Arcel said. That game's a pretty good Star Wars game, I'd say. I think anytime a company like Sony, who kind of puts their crutch on their first party exclusives and their homegrown studios, I think anytime that they get involved with a game that's exclusively coming to PlayStation, even if it's just a timed exclusive like Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think that bodes well for the majority of people, considering PlayStation's sales numbers. Obviously, a majority of people have a PlayStation. So, and I think Sony as a company is big enough and has enough money to pump extra dollars into helping these studios grow, and I don't think the studio will be an exception to that. I think they'll help as much as they can, because with a track record like Assassin's Creed, working at Ubisoft, like Arso said, kind of during the golden era of Ubisoft, I think there's huge potential to get a really popular new IP going on Sony, which I think bodes well for a majority of gamers, especially with Sony kind of moving to put some games on PC as well. So I feel like it can only do good things. I think I would kind of shy away from the Stadia part of her career, because I mean, if you're not familiar with Stadia, basically just cloud gaming from Google, which seems to be already on its way out.
Complete failure.
So I would kind of, complete failure pretty much. So I would look past that. I expect good things. I'm really interested to see what comes from it.
Yeah, and I just adding my 2 cents as well is I think this is all very reactionary from PlayStation to like Xbox and Nintendo. It's not like they're sitting by idly. They are, they're making moves on their own fronts. Like Xbox is being very, very aggressive with the Bethesda purchase, with Game Pass. Game Pass is the best deal, like literally in the gaming industry. Like if you look at Game Pass, it's amazing what you can get for that monthly subscription. And then Nintendo is obviously making moves on the financial front with how many people have a Switch and how they're taking over Japan, essentially. And I think Sony is starting to realize that they can't be complacent, with their success with the PS4 era. And I think we've seen that with like the PS Plus games that are coming out. Like these past few months have been like absolutely amazing. The play at home, like the 10 or 11 free games that they're giving out, and there's some really good games in that, like The Witness and Ratchet and Clank and Horizon Zero Dawn. I think they know that they have to fight to at least keep the crown in the home console market. And that's why competition is always good. You don't want one company just winning at every single battle. You want everyone to kind of be making moves for the crown, and everyone has to kind of react to that and up their game. So I don't know if you guys wanted to add to that, but I could take it to the next story. Or go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, like you said, competition is only going to be a good thing for the industry, and the more studios per company between Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, obviously, the more differences there are between the three, the better that will be as consumers, because we're going to have more options and more games. I mean, imagine if all consoles had the same games, I don't think there would be as many new creative ideas across the three. But that was kind of my final thoughts on, Jade coming into Sony with the new studio.
Yeah, and yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think kind of building off of that conversation, in terms of moves that PlayStation is making for the future, is there's been some VR announcements lately. A few weeks ago, PlayStation doubled down on their backing of VR, saying that they're gonna be making a PSVR 2, and I don't think that's a surprise, because I actually think that, surprisingly, the PSVR 1 is the most popular VR headset out there. I know when a lot of people think of VR, they probably think of something PC related, so it's a little surprising when you find out that it's actually the PSVR that sold the most units. I think like 6 or 7 million headsets, which is actually a lot. But now they're going to make a second one, and then they also revealed the controllers as well, which look more like something. They look better than PS Move controllers that you use with VR1, and they look more like something like with HTC Vive or Valve Index, like some of the more PC. It looks more like the PC VR headset controllers. But yeah, I just want to kick it off to you guys. What do you guys think of their doubling down of VR? Does this make you interested in VR if they, playing games on VR? I know, like, Game of the Year contender last year was Half-Life Alyx. Like, if there's more games like that, go ahead, maybe John.
Yeah, I think that this really does actually get me more interested in VR, especially now that there's these new controllers. They definitely look interesting, but they look like they're going to be a much more immersive kind of controller to, I think, what was the PlayStation Move controllers is what you use for PlayStation 4. Yeah, so it already looks a lot more immersive, and I think that if Sony's legit, doubling down on this and, putting resources toward it, we know it's going to turn out good. I mean, it's rare, and knock on wood, obviously, but it's rare that Sony will put resources into something and give up on it like Google. They'll really put their effort into it, and it really makes me excited to see, if potentially Sony has, some of their first party studios doing special VR games just for PlayStation consoles, because that'll just, that'll open up the door for VR, I think, because then, maybe Xbox will be like, okay, this is a market, maybe we have to get into this, and maybe Nintendo will take a little more serious approach to VR. They have Labo with their VR, and it works with Breath of the Wild, which is insane. But I think that if Sony really makes a solid stance on this and puts resources toward it, like I said, it's going to force the other companies to do so, and the market's going to flourish, and the consumers are going to be happy about it. Andrew, what do you think about Sony kind of, putting more resources toward VR as well?
I think it's really interesting because, right now, like Arcel said, there's HTC Vive, there's, Oculus. But the thing with those is that they generally need like a PC setup, from what I get from it. I don't know about Oculus, but I know the HTC one, you need a PC. So I feel like, with the success that PlayStation's had, and, their cheaper entry price point compared to, building a PC that can do like, maybe not necessarily graphically intense VR, but like smooth VR. I feel like it's a good entry point, and with PlayStation being able to get into so many homes, it only can, give them benefits by giving their player base a new way to play. I think it's really interesting. I would like to see, kind of what new VR titles they can come out with. I think one of the new ones coming out is Doom on VR. I think that would be really cool. I think their success with the VR all kind of just hinges on what franchises they give a quality VR game to. Whether because I don't know how they if they have plans for it, but I feel like any of the Uncharted games would be insane in VR. I think that'd be cool as hell.
Yeah, they need to utilize the IP. I think that's
right. Yeah, because I know like their bigger one on the original one. I think like I know Gran Turismo had a VR mode that you could do, which is a really cool idea, except for the fact you have to buy a steering wheel and stuff too.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to like how popular VR can be that something like the PSVR has sold 6 to 7 million VR headsets, and there really isn't like some killer app on the PSVR where you could be like, oh yeah, like that that's the one, like that's a game of the year contender, like because it's not like Half-Life Alyx is on PSVR. There's not really like a big budget heavy hitter game, and it's still been a success for them. So it's just like, imagine if they actually utilized their IP and made like an Uncharted game, or made like there's been rumors that they're making a VR Horizon game actually, which would be that would be insane. Like just imagining that, like fighting those those robots, like that would be crazy. But I don't know. Do you guys have any more thoughts on this?
I was actually gonna kind of piggyback off of what Andrew was saying about other contenders and competitors in VR needing kind of a beefy PC setup. I think it really is a testament to Sony how they make gaming in general so accessible to so many people. I mean, like the PS4 was the cheapest, newest console on the market at the time. The PSVR is one of the cheapest VR headsets, and most people have a PlayStation 4, so they can access it with that. So I think that it's really cool to just see how Sony makes these new things that are typically so expensive a lot more accessible to so many more people. And even if they're potentially losing money on it at first, which Sony most commonly does, they've always proven themselves to get a return on their investment, and it really makes me excited to see what they'll do with VR in general, because I've been wanting to pick up a PSVR for PS4. I just haven't had the reason to do it yet, but once I get a PS5 and once they start putting more resources into it, I think that it's probably going to be almost a household item, considering they sold 7 million already with no good offerings really. If they have at least one or two really good offerings in the first year after they really take a deep dive into this, dude, game over. Game over for Microsoft and game over for Nintendo. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for VR. I think it is the future of gaming. So
yeah, there's gonna be a day where it's like I'm expecting like like some Inception like dream, you're in the dream kind of shit, like
right, because you can only take visual improvements so far before you need to innovate, and I think VR is the next big thing.
Yeah, like imagine being like in VR with like Last of Us level graphics, like, and you're in it. That's like first person. We're gonna get to that point one day. You're gonna need some crazy ass consoles and crazy ass, whatever. But it's gonna happen one day. Maybe the next generation. Who knows?
Maybe even this one. I mean, we're at the very beginning of it, and we've seen the advancement of graphics and games in general on PS4, PS3. So I'd be surprised if the same exact thing didn't happen with the PS5, where developers unlock, new tools and things to make their games look even better.
Yeah, like seriously, with this whole generation, like remember we all played Last of Us Part 1 in 2013, and we were like, bro, how could it get better than this? And
Exactly, dude.
Yeah, and then played The Last of Us 2, and it's like, now I'm literally still like, how could it get better than this? It'll probably look so much better. And we'll be looking back at like something like Last of Us 2 and be like, yeah, that looks okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. But all right, that's all of the current event topics. And now let's go ahead and get into the main topic of the week.
Podcasts and web shows are on the rise, and for good reason. They're great sources of entertainment and can be great listens in multitudes of situations like long drives or intense study sessions. Maybe, just maybe, you have an idea for a show or podcast that you want to put out into the world. Well, lucky for you, it's never been easier to jump into podcasting thanks to the wonderful people at Anchor.fm. Anchor takes care of most of the back-end work of podcasts. No more are the days of coordinating releases on multiple platforms, paying for a podcast hosting subscription to hold your RSS feed, or other hassles. Anchor sets up your podcast on all the major podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple automatically. They even provide sleek and easy-to-use editing tools that can be accessed from your phone or computer to get your podcast to the world through the path of least resistance. Anchor also matches you up with sponsors so that you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and even gives you in-depth stats for your shows like total plays, regions of viewership, as well as what kind of devices your show is being listened on. Here's the best part about all of this. It's free. So what are you waiting for? Anchor has everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. If you're ready to add your voice and vision to the mix, it's never been easier. And I highly recommend you go the way of Anchor.fm, just like the ControllerCast did. So here you go. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. That's Anchor.fm.
All right, so our main topic of the week, and this is very timely because, well, the Grammys happened this past week, and it's the 1-year anniversary of this album. It was actually yesterday, and that is After Hours by The Weeknd. Now, this was the 6th project of The Weeknd. Before he dropped My Dear Melancholy in 2018, and his last full-length studio album was Starboy. And, there's a lot of anticipation coming into this album because there was such a long gap between this album and his last album, the longest gap we'd seen for him between dropping projects. So I just wanted to kick off the conversation by talking about our expectations coming into the album. I'll go ahead and start. I was expecting for him coming into the album to take a lot more of a hip hop related approach, like a lot more of a maybe darker, like a trap album. That was my expectation going into the album. But then, he took a lot different of a direction, which I also ended up loving. But those are my expectations about, okay, what is this album going to be like? And then, once he started showing some of the singles and the imagery of the album, I was expecting a very colorful album sonically, but also one that had tinges of darkness. But what do you guys think? What were your guys' expectations? Sorry.
My expectations coming in were just really high. I didn't really know kind of what direction Abel was going to take with this album. I wasn't sure if he was going to go, a more darker route or more sing-songy. But I thought that, what he put out was really good. But with my expectations being so high, I feel like personally it didn't quite hit. It was a little bit darker of an album, which I can get down to, but personally, I just like listening to more upbeat things. That's just me. So it's not an album that I put on repeat very often. But my expectations were super high, and I think that it met them to a certain extent. But we'll get more into that later in this topic. But Andrew, what were your expectations, or expectations coming in?
After My Dear Melancholy came out, I think I had an imagination that he was kind of going back to like, the Trilogy type vibe, as opposed to, the Starboy type little pop vibe, which he did to an extent. And I think personally, I didn't expect the album to be as good as it actually was. Because I think Starboy for as good of an album as it was, and the one before that, Beauty Behind the Madness, I thought they were good albums at the core, but they had some real stinkers on there, which I think I was kind of worried about it. I was like, I wonder. I like looking at the track list before it came out. I was like, which song is going to be like, the dark times, or the losers of this album. So, I had
losers.
pretty tempered expectations, which is probably, that godforsaken song. So I think I had pretty tempered expectations, and I like John said, we'll get into it later, but it vastly exceeded every expectation I could ever imagine for a weekend album.
Well, I'll actually lead on from expectations on my thoughts on the singles leading up to the album, because that kind of kicked off some of my expectations as well. So Heartless was the first single that came out, and I don't know if Heartless really gave a super good idea of what the album would be about, or would be like, and I mean, I think it matched the vibe, but it seemed like more of a Starboy track that crept its way into After Hours. Then there was Blinding Lights. So I think that most people that are listening to this podcast have heard this song. I mean, it's one of the biggest tracks that have come out in the last few years, ever, really. I mean, it's shattering records on Billboard. It's like I said, it's the second single that came out. And I think this sets a little bit better tone of what the album's going to be like. Kind of with the 80s vibes and the synthy tones. The entire album kind of has a nice synthy sound throughout. And it feels fresh, but vintage at the same time. So these were the first two songs. But they were actually like my favorite songs on the album. Like, these were the main bangers that I would play on repeat. And even now, a year later, after the albums come out, these are the two tracks that I still go back to, which really set my expectations super high. And I mean, they're the tracks that I'm still playing on repeat. I don't go back to a whole lot else regularly. But Andrew, what were your thoughts, on the singles that came out leading up?
I'm going to deflect this one to Arsenal, because I think my opinion will merge nicely into the actual talk about the album.
Oh, fair.
Yeah. Okay. So I enjoyed. Let's talk about Heartless first, because that's the one that came out first. I enjoyed Heartless a lot when it first came out, but I felt like the diminishing returns with that song came really fast. Where I don't know. I don't think it has the strongest hook, and I don't think it's as hard hitting after the first few listens as it could be. To me personally, I don't know why, but it doesn't have as much of that punch to me as it did when I maybe heard it the first few times. So after listening to that song after a week or so, I was not as hot on it, but I was still interested because it seemed like an interesting style compared to like what he was doing with the music video. Like, it was a very hard-hitting, dark song. So I was interested to see where he was going to go from there. And then it felt like Blinding Lights was almost like a total 180 to that song. So both of those songs, actually, I was like, okay, I'm not really sure what direction this album is going to go. And I think what ended up happening was it kind of went in the direction of both of these singles. It really took kind of the darker sound of Heartless and the more synthy, nighttime pop of like the 80s, and it really kind of fused both of those, and I think it does that on the album masterfully. I think it does it like in a really great way. But I think coming like just off these singles, I like them, but I wasn't totally sure what to make of them in terms of like what they're going to represent for the album, and and the sorry, I lost my train of thought here. But I actually think Heartless is one of the weakest songs on the album, and I also think Blinding Lights is kind of a middle tier song on the album. But Andy, go ahead, and I know you wanted to talk about it, so go for it.
Yeah, so, okay, just a little disclaimer for everybody listening. On Friday, I went full on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia style, connecting the red lines, the conspiracy, trying to figure out the meaning of this album. So, to start off with the singles, Heartless came out before Blinding Lights. So, he's I feel like listening to Heartless is kind of, refreshing compared to, My Dear Melancholy and Starboy, because My Dear Melancholy is so kind of slow, reserved. Starboy is really kind of like out there, and then Heartless came in kind of in that middle ground where it's like it's kind of like a deeper tone Weeknd song with kind of the pop feel, but not too overly done like on Starboy's tracks. So I kind of thought, it's kind of gonna go back to like a Kissland Trilogy style. Then Blinding Lights comes out, and it's as good as that song is, you can tell he really went for the mainstream audience, and I mean obviously it paid off. It's the first and only song to ever be on the top 10 for an entire year in a row, which is insane. That no song's ever done that before until Blinding Lights. And Blinding Lights definitely has some legs, and I think it's a really good song. I think the hook is really good. It's catchy. I remember when it came out, a lot of people like our parents' age, they were like, this sounds a lot like "Take on Me" by Aha.
Yeah.
So like, I think it was really going for that 80s type feel. I think it did get that for the most part, and I guess that'll kind of transition me into the album itself. So I kind of went through, I don't know if I read too far into it, but we'll go track by track.
Yeah, just pass it around, but track by track to us.
Yeah. So to start off, After Hours, the title, the album in general, it's kind of like, looking at, Starboy, if the meaning of Starboy's album is, him finding, mainstream stardom after Beauty Behind the Madness, After Hours is kind of like, I think of it as the stuff that happens when people aren't watching, and I'll explain later as we go through the tracks, but I feel like a lot of this album, kind of like the lyrics and the meanings of this is kind of like him putting sort of like an outward struggle, and showing everybody, what happens behind the scenes when you hit, stardom of this magnitude. So I guess that's kind of what I get, and I feel like going into this album, I thought of that before I listened to it, so I kind of had, a set-aside tone to what I was going to be listening for as I listened to this album retrospectively this week. So I guess just first off, Alone Again. Alone Again is a really good opening track, I think, and I also think that, obviously this tour was supposed to happen this year, but it's going to end up happening in 2022. I feel like Alone Again seems like just like, kind of like the synth build-up, the whole vibe of the song kind of just comes off as a song that he would open a concert with, just because, it's like, as you guys know, it's slower, it kind of builds up, you get that synth that comes in, and then, that just kind of like, not necessarily basic beat, but really chill, kind of R&B style beat that comes in towards the end. I think it's a great opening song, and I really appreciate when artists, make opening songs that have, kind of the feel like you're at a concert, I guess one I can think of is, Shawn Mendes' new album. Not to get too off topic, but his intro, is kind of like the same style as Alone Again. So I think The Weeknd nailed it with the first track. Kind of opening up. He's like, I don't know if I can be alone again. Kind of setting the tone. It sounds like he kind of started to go through. It's like fresh off a breakup maybe. He's kind of like, oh, I don't know if I can be alone again. I've been with somebody for so long, and I what are you guys' thoughts on that song? Because I think it's an excellent song to start off with.
So, I'll just kind of take it from there because I also shared similar. What is going on here? Similar thoughts on the song, where I think it's a really, really good opening track. I remember my first impressions of it were kind of like, okay, this is just really hard to understand what the hell he's saying, but I think this track sets the tone for the album extremely well. I think one thing that a lot of people might, but I think they should pick up, even if they don't, is that the production, this sets the tone for the production levels of this album. This album is cinematic as hell. The production is amazing in this opening track. The song is really split into those it's really a two-part song, and when the first part ends in the song and it kind of doesn't go completely quiet, you can kind of feel and hear the synth building back up in the background and coming back up and with this really thunderous bass drop or beat drop. I think this song really sets the tone really well, and the second half goes really hard. And the first track is amazing build-up, and I think we just get a really good idea of the level of production, the general feel of this album through this opening song, and I think that's what the best opening songs can do. So, John?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it really does set a good tone for the album. It's not too fast, feels a little darker, and I think that's kind of what this album is about. It's not meant to be, not every song's going to be a banger that's on the radio, that you jam with the windows down. And this album's not really trying to be that. There's songs like that, but Alone Again is not one of those, headbanging, windows down. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I wouldn't be doing that to Alone Again. It's kind of a more feelsy song, but it does set a good tone for the album. It's a good first track. I think that Heartless could have been a good first track, even, for me, but I think that it does set a good tone for the album going forward. But what was your thoughts on Too Late, Andrew?
So I guess, if you guys want to unpack it a little more, you can and let me know. But I feel like I kind of grouped, in my mind, Too Late, Hardest to Love, and Scared to Live kind of all together. As, they all have different tones, but I feel like they're kind of... I mesh them together because I feel like that's the weakest little streak in the album, are those three songs. Those are the three that I really, they're not extremely memorable songs. I think not that they're bad songs, because it's kind of like, these songs are all so good that even a bad song isn't bad. Really, it's just bad relative to the other ones. I think those are the three weakest albums in that okay, sorry. The three weakest songs in this stretch of the album. It's kind of like, he says, it's too late, we're on our own, and then, you're trying to let me go, and Hardest to Love, and then Scared to Live, he's like, or Scared to Live, he's saying, they're both scared to love again. I think these are crucial for, the way the album kind of flows and the deeper meaning behind it. But sonically, I feel like these are the three weakest songs. I don't know if you guys had any opinion. Maybe Arsenal. I don't know if you have a different opinion on that.
Yeah.
Specific.
So, yeah, I think it's hard for me to figure out what would be the weakest run of songs on this album, because I love this album, and I have trouble even figuring out what my favorite songs are. But I think, yeah, maybe there could be a good argument, and Andrew, I think you might have made a good argument with why these might be some of the weaker songs. But for me personally, I love Too Late. I know that is not a popular opinion. I know that is considered one of the weaker songs. Same with the other two songs after it. I know those are considered some of the weaker songs, but I love Too Late. I think it carries that cinematic flair from the first song. Specifically how the bass kicks in certain lines, and the way he carries out like his inflections on the chorus at the end with the like where it does that, and then what is it? And I think it carries that cinematic flair, but also makes it a really catchy and enjoyable song to me. I think Hardest to Love is also good. It's kind of just like a cutesy track. I really like the liquid drums on that song. And I'm a sucker for that. And I like the really kind of fast-paced beat to the song that matches kind of the more cutesy lyrics of it. I will say, though, and this is probably why maybe this 3-song run would make it the weakest, is the one song that I really can't get with on this album is Scared to Live. I think it's I think it's like a little too melodramatic for my taste, and I think for the album's taste in general. I think its only saving grace really is The Weeknd's vocal performance is genuinely like S tier, amazing, fantastic. Like, he has great vocals on the song, but I just think the vibe is just kind of off with the song. I almost never listen to it. It's 100%. I know it's 100% the song that has gotten the least amount of plays for me on the album. I almost always skip it when it comes on in my rotation. But yeah, that's kind of my take on these 3 songs. What about you, John?
Yeah, I really like Too Late as well, Arcel. I think it. I really like those bass lines and how punchy it gets in there. But Hardest to Love is one of my favorite songs on the album. I think it's just his vocals in it, in the chorus and the hook to it, for me, is one of the most catchy. Every time I hear it, it's stuck in my head for like a week after. But I think that actually what I would include almost in that group of songs is Snow Child, because I feel like Escape from LA is like the turning point in the album for me.
I would put Snow Child. I would cut it off where Andrew would, and like kind of group Snow Child with Escape from LA then forward.
Really?
I kind of see that though, John. I see what you mean, because I mean, you know, I guess for Snow Child, you know, he kind of is just like, you know, outlining where he's at in his life. Kind of almost like he's, you know, after a breakup, maybe you like start coping. You're like, you know, I'm better than this person still. You know, I'm this, and this. So,
I'm Philip K. Dick.
yeah. And then you know, Escape from LA kind of turns. He's like, you know, he needs to leave LA. You know, it's time for him to get out, to get out and move on.
Would you?
Maybe so. Yeah, I definitely agree with you, John. I feel like you could also include Snow Child in there as Escape from LA kind of transitioned to like a second, like a 2 out of 3 part of the
John,
album.
what'd you think of Scared to Live?
Scared to Live, for me, I would agree with you, Arcel. I think it's probably the weakest song in the album. It's just, it doesn't feel like The Weeknd we know. It almost feels like the Drake track of the album. But no, I think that it was probably the weakest one, but I think that Snow Child was almost as weak for me. It's just, for me, that song's goofy. It's a little goofy, like the spaceship and the Philip K. Dick line. I get stuck on that every time I hear it.
That song is vibey, bro.
It is vibey.
Yeah, and I think I'll just put it out there now so I don't, you know, run back over this tread and talk about the whole song again. But Snow Child is my least favorite song in the whole album, personally.
That and Scared to Live for me are the two, and Faith. That's later in the album, but
You think
few
Faith?
songs down.
You don't like Faith?
I don't like Faith.
Okay.
very
Well,
much.
here. Well, okay. Oh yeah, we'll get there.
We'll get to
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to put that in so I didn't double check. But yeah, anyways, Snowchild, probably my least favorite by far. I don't know if you guys had any more thoughts on Snowchild before we go to
Goofy.
the second.
I know. I love Snowchild. Like I think the hook is like really dreamy. Like it's
Dreamy is a good word.
Yeah, like like it's kind of like light in its delivery, and I just like how kind of laid back he is with his like flow and the beat.
Right, he
throughout the
doesn't
whole
take
song.
himself too seriously.
Yeah.
In this song.
But yeah, that I know I'm saying I'm liking all these songs, but I mean I love the album. But yeah, so far up to this point, the only song I haven't really liked is "Scared to Live." But then now I guess we can talk about Escape from LA, Andrew, if you wanted to.
Yeah, so I'll kind of just for the listener's sake, I'll kind of loosely group these. So Escape from LA, I think that song, all these songs, it kind of shows the cohesion of this album, just knowing that all the songs kind of contribute to this main theme of what goes on, quote unquote after hours, like a business. You kind of see behind the scenes stuff. So Escape from LA, kind of he's getting ready to like move on by leaving LA, go to a different city, kind of leave the life with that girl behind. I think it's a really good song, and I think also contributing to the meaning is the ending, where it kind of we had sex in the studio, just kind of reminiscing on special times in his mind that they had before he leaves. And then there's kind of that transition into Heartless, where it's just kind of like F this, F that, never need a bitch, I'm what a bitch needs.
Right.
He's making the statement that like he doesn't need a girl, the girls are the ones that need him, just kind of like that kind of like alpha mentality almost. And then I think in this other 3-song little bundle, I would put Faith. I know John said he didn't really like Faith. I think Faith is an excellent song. Personally, I love the sound of it, and it's just kind of like the theme is like maybe he's like on this like mental high from the Heartless thing, where he's just like like I said, he's the one the girls need him, not the other way around. And now he's just like he says in Faith, I lost my faith, kind of like he's going back to drugs and stuff. Maybe he's like coming on the come down from a mental high like that. But sonically, I think all 3 of these songs are really good. I would definitely put Faith at the top of these 3, but Escape from LA is also a very chill song to have on maybe in the background. Arso, if you have some thoughts on those 3.
Yeah, so Escape from LA is probably in contention for my favorite song on the album. I love when The Weeknd just gets into his R&B bag, and he really does that with this song. I love when he has those long, drawn-out songs where he can, really do his thing. Like, this is like a 6-minute song. And this is a song where, like, After Hours, the song After Hours later in the album, it feels like a really natural, like, cohesion of everything The Weeknd has been up to this point. And it keeps some of that glossy, Hollywood-esque, nighttime vibe with this song, but it also brings some of that darkness back from something like Trilogy or Kissland. And this is, I think this kind of song this song is a perfect encapsulation. This and After Hours, these two songs are perfect encapsulations of, to me, the whole entire style and vibe of this album. So I really love Escape from LA, especially the second half, the We Had Sex in the Studio half, and kind of that crescendo after that whole section. Like, I love the song. It's one of my favorite Weeknd songs, honestly. Then Heartless, this is going to be my hot take of the album here, but I would say after Scared to Live, this is probably my least favorite song. I I genuinely think this is one of the worst songs on the album. I'm not saying that the song is bad, but I think it's one of the worst songs on this album that I adore. So it's kind of like a backhanded compliment, but yeah, I think this Heartless is just one of the weaker songs. I think it's a little I think it's low key a little corny, and I think the hook isn't that great, and I don't know. That's just me. And then with Faith, I absolutely love Faith, especially the first half of the song. I think this is what he was trying to do with Heartless, but I feel like he kind of missed the target with Heartless. I think like Faith does what Heartless does, but fits the mold of this album better and the style of this album better. Especially the middle section where it's like, I lost my faith, I'm losing my religion every day, like that whole part. I love. I'd say honestly, actually, probably the worst part of the song is the outro. I think it's, I get why it's there for story purposes and the like cohesion of the album, but usually when you're just kind of casually listening to these songs, that kind of from the upbeat first half to that way slower second half, I usually actually end up just changing the song. But I actually do Faith is definitely one of my favorite songs on the album, from just based off of that first 3 to 4 minutes of the song. But John.
Yeah.
Andrew, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you also don't want to hear the outro while you're driving with all the cop sirens. You know, I swear every time I'm listening to that song, I'm looking around right at that part because I'm like, I hear a siren somewhere. And then I'm like, oh, yeah.
Dude, same.
He put a siren in the song. Anyways, John.
Yep. Faith, for the reasons, Arsenal, you like it, I almost don't like it because I feel like Heartless was good enough to kind of set the tone for the second half of the album. I think that Faith was almost a little too melodramatic. Like what you said about Scared to Live, I think that was what Faith was. And I also just didn't like really the sound of it. It's not a song I go back to very often. But Escape from LA, dude, that I love, like you said, Ursel, when The Weeknd has his 2-part tracks. This one is one of his better ones. I love when it kicks into the second half of the track. Like you had mentioned, that crescendo kind of to the end, going into Heartless. It's a perfect transitioning track for me into the middle part of the album. And then Heartless for me is still a main banger. I love this track. I really think it kind of embodies what I imagine The Weeknd to be. Like, he's this, Casanova that he doesn't need anyone else. He's his own person. He's a badass, and he's heartless. But and I would almost group Blinding Lights into this into Escape from LA, Heartless, Faith, and finally Blinding Lights into kind of the second third of the album. I think that those, like with Faith, it transitions perfectly into Blinding Lights, where he's in the back of a cop car, there's sirens, and then he gets out of it and now he's partying. But before I get into Blinding Lights, I'll let you continue, Andrew.
All right, yeah. So then we get to Blinding Lights, which, yeah, John, you probably organize this a lot better than I did. Cause
no way.
Now that you say it, I'd probably put it in there, in this group. So I obviously everybody knows Blinding Lights. Breaking records left and right. I think this song is really good. I think it's catchy. It's a song that for some reason I haven't gotten extremely tired with, even though I hear it, pretty much everywhere.
Agreed.
But in this song, he's like, when I'm like this, you're the one I want. So it kind of builds off Faith. He's like back on drugs and alcohol. When he's like that, he's when he's under the influence, he's kind of like thinking of his ex still. You know what? I'll let you guys talk about Blinding Lights, and then I'll get into the final third, because I feel like the final third is we could go on for a while about. But Arcel?
Yeah, I would actually, speaking of how we're like organizing it, I would say this song is almost like an interlude, because it's a good closer to the second half of the second third of the album. But in terms of vibe, in terms of like how it sonically matches some of the other songs, it actually fits the next two songs really well. I think like this, In Your Eyes, and Save Your Tears, like they're all could probably be that's a really good 3-song run. But Blinding Lights, amazing song in my opinion. I think and that you can say that just off the fact that this song is so popular still, that like he really found his stride in terms of like making pop music and dropped this song. And like we've heard this song so many times, and I don't think it's like egregiously annoying or like I'm absolutely sick and tired of it like some other songs that if they were this popular, like for this song I probably would be at this point. I still like the song. I love the bridge between the end of the second chorus and the third chorus. The like I just want to let you know, like that really dramatic gap between the second and third chorus. I love the song, and yeah, it does sound like Take On Me, but I think it's a fantastic song in its own right at the end of the day, regardless of how much it's played. So John?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as we mentioned before, it's smashing the records. It's had the most consecutive weeks on Billboard, like Hot 10, I guess it would be. It's a really good track. I think it really closes out what we say is the second third. I would almost say the first half. I think it closes out the first half of the album, because the next few songs I would say are almost their own half of the album. But I still come back to Blinding Lights all the time. I mean, no matter how much it plays on the radio, no matter how much I hear it, it still resonates with me. And I think it will for years and years to come. And I really think that it just kind of speaks volumes to what The Weeknd can do, between having those smash hits on an album like this, and then also, you know, having the darker undertones and an underlying story. And then you can just listen to that one track and bang it out and jam to it without getting the rest of the story from the album, because you don't need it. And not everyone needs it. But this track in particular, I think will be, you know, one of The Weeknd's most popular tracks, and will live on for a long, long time to come. Like, our kids are going to be listening to this. But I guess we'll maybe talk about the last third of the album, Andrew.
Yeah, so I'll go through the last third. I'll stop during the act. You know, I'll give an interlude for us during the interlude of the album, and then we'll finish it out. So I got in this last third. I got In Your Eyes. You know, that song I feel like is The Weeknd trying to get that one mainstream. Same with Save Your Tears. I feel like those two songs he's really pushing to get mainstream. And, you know, rightfully so. I think they're both very catchy, both upbeat songs. You know, the meaning, you know, In Your Eyes, he might, you know, see his ex somewhere, you know, in her eyes he can see, you know, there's something still there, but ultimately it's not going to be there. And then Save Your Tears, I also dig a lot. I think Save Your Tears is an excellent song. And it's gone pretty mainstream. Same with In Your Eyes. Like, I guess maybe it's, you know, with the music videos that came out for each of them. But, you know, Save Your Tears, he kind of sees her. It's kind of builds off of In Your Eyes, you know. He thinks of kind of all the sad things he did, you know, and kind of says, you know, metaphorically, you know, save your tears don't cry over me. I messed this up. Stuff like that. So, and then we go to Repeat After Me, the interlude. So this one, he kind of, sees her with another man, and he assumes, kind of with that heartless mentality maybe, that she's, still thinking of him while she's with another guy. So, and the song itself, I think it's good to have an interlude thrown in there, and I think this was a good interlude because on Starboy personally, they have the Stargirl interlude. That song I wish could be a full song. I feel like Repeat After Me is perfect length. You don't really want more, but it's a good little break before the marathons to the end of the album. So what are you guys' thoughts on those two tracks in the interlude?
Yeah,
I'll actually...
Go ahead.
Sorry, Arso. I was going to say, I'll start us off kind of piggybacking off of what you said, Andrew. I feel like these songs are perfectly grouped together, In Your Eyes and Save Your Tears. In fact, I think they could almost be one song. I feel like they kind of have the same tone to them. And for me, considering they got music videos, I think that these are a couple of the weaker songs on the album. I didn't really like the tone of them too much. I thought they were kind of boring, especially after something like Blinding Lights, and then it goes, into the interlude, and then After Hours, which is one of my favorite songs on the album. I don't know. I'm not too hot on these two. I think they're a little too lovey-dovey. Well, In Your Eyes, at least. And then going into the interlude, I think that this could have just been taken out. It's so forgettable. I don't know about you guys, but this one...
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, it could have just not been there. I guess it was a nice break to go into After Hours, but what did you think about that few stretch of songs, Arcel?
I think like off first impressions and maybe looking at the album as a whole, maybe in retrospect he probably could have maybe. It's weird because it's like a double-edged sword. I think putting this stretch of songs together works for the cohesion and the mood of the album, but also getting them back to back feels like, oh, these are very similar. These are kind of similar in style, and right. I think he was going for that, but it can maybe be a little bit of a detriment if you kind of look at it critically. And it's interesting because usually when you have some more upbeat, more mainstream songs in a track listing for an album, you usually find those kinds of songs in near the beginning of most albums. So it was really interesting to me that he put these near the back half of the album, and the first half is a lot more mellowed out. I like these songs a lot. I think the reason I like this album a lot more than something like Starboy is I felt like he was able to keep a lot of class and artistic style and artistic integrity with these songs, where they do sound mainstream, but it feels like these are, he's putting his spin on it. He has his own style that he's really curated and he's really crafting with this album, and I think that's why I give these songs more of a pass than maybe some of the songs on Starboy, actually, because they feel more curated to the Weeknd and the style he's going for with this album. So I like these songs. Probably a little more middle of the line for the album in my eyes. I think Repeat After Me is an amazing interlude. I think but keep in mind it's an interlude. And I'm thinking in the grand scheme of things, I think it's a really, really good song. I like these kind of more slow R&B style songs that The Weeknd does. These are my favorite kinds of songs of his, so I really liked it. I love the Tame Impala production on it, because I love Tame Impala, and having him be on the album was super awesome to hear. And you can really hear it just from the beginning of the song. It sounds exactly like a Tame Impala song. And I actually think I would actually split the songs up even more, where I think Repeat After Me moving forward is kind of the last stretch of this album, as opposed to putting these next three songs with the past these three songs that we just talked about. But Andrew, you want to go ahead and talk about After Hours and Until I Bleed Out.
Yep. So I'll just go through the general storyline of these two since they're the last two, and then I'll have a very interesting review of these. So After Hours, kind of, in the song goes, it's all my fault, all my fault. She
All my
let her
fart.
guard down. He yeah, maybe that's why she broke up with him. Maybe he fought her. So he says, it's all my fault. He made her let her guard down and lied to her repeatedly. So now he's kind of like looking back, trying to figure out where he went wrong. And then Until I Bleed Out, I think is kind of like, if this album is a grieving cycle, I think he's at the last stage of acceptance on Until I Bleed Out. He's like, I always want her back, but it's always going to drag me down until I bleed out, being a metaphor for dying, until he takes his final breath someday. So that kind of, wraps up the story of the album. I think the story of the album makes the album
Very dark.
Have a lot more, very, very dark. It's very sad. And I think most people can probably relate to it, kind of like going through a breakup, going through a grieving cycle, such as that. But anyways, the songs itself, After Hours, automatic number one for me on this album, by far my favorite song. The intro, pretty smooth intro. And then, you guys know me. I'm a huge sucker for beat switches.
Yeah.
So when the beat switches in this song, it almost switches twice actually. There's the intro, and then the middle part, and then the one part that kind of got memed, at least at the start of quarantine. I know.
The outro.
The outro part where the person's you see their house from the outside, you see the LED lights flashing, and then they go in and they're face down at 3 a.m. During quarantine, listening to the outro, to the last part of the song. And I could listen to After Hours. It might sound cliche because it's the song named after the album, or is the album named after the song? I don't know. But I that song I could listen to on repeat over and over and over again, never get tired.
Yeah.
And then same with Bleed Out, Until I Bleed Out. I think, not to sound like I'm from 2013, but when the bass drops on Until I Bleed Out is just, it's just auditory bliss, I think. I always jack the volume all the way up when it's about to hit. And I think these two songs are honestly my top two songs on the album, and they're back to back, which is insane to me. But what are you guys' thoughts on the final two tracks of the album, or the non-deluxe album?
Yeah, I'll take it off. So After Hours, I remember this was actually, so he dropped 3 singles, and I know we didn't talk about it, but I think it was better saved for when we were actually talking about the album. But he did drop the song After Hours like maybe a week before the album came out. And I remember seeing it was a 6-minute song and being like, okay, let's strap it, baby. Like, let's get ready for this one. A 6-minute single, let's get it. And just, from the first minute and a half, like, this is leading somewhere. Like, you're like, okay, this is building up to something where, like, this is clearly the intro. Like, what is the actual song? And it's an amazing build up, and when the beat kicks in, it was like, I remember the first time I heard it, like, and I know this sounds just totally fanboyish and all this stuff, but like I got like goosebumps when I heard this song for the first time, and that beat dropped. It was just like one of those like, damn, like The Weeknd is in his bag, like right when that beat drops, you're like, damn, the boy's like cooking up some heat right now, like, And I think the song, like I said with Escape from LA, it's just like it's like, damn, like The Weeknd took like all of his eras and like put it all in one song. And that's why like listening to the song when I first heard it was like amazing. I was just like, I never thought that because I hadn't heard Escape from LA up to when I first heard the song. So when I heard After Hours the song, I was just like, wow, like I was blown away. I think it's like one of his best songs because I was just like, I can't believe he was able to put so many of his styles, so many of his eras into this one song. And it felt like a culmination of everything The Weeknd has been as an artist, like up to this point, was this song, and I loved it. It felt like the ultimate like showcase moment for the album. And then Until I Bleed Out, I think is a fantastic outro. I think like a seriously amazing outro. Great end to the album, and I appreciate this song like a lot of other songs, like Repeat After Me and some other songs that maybe if you look at the song as on its own, is someone's house burning down?
No, it's fucking Amazon's truck is loud as shit backing up. I apologize.
No, it's all good. But I appreciate a lot of these songs in the context of the album as a whole, like what they mean for the album and why he put them where they are in the track listing. And I think Until I Bleed Out is an amazing outro, and it's super dark, puts the album really in a darker perspective, and I love the outro. So John, go ahead.
Yeah, so After Hours, man, I mean, this song, it, much like the album itself, it has its beginning, middle, and end. For me, there's 3 separate parts to this song. The first, minute and a half leading up to where the bass starts punching, and I love that. It's a joy to listen to because, like you said, Ursel, he literally puts all of his eggs that he has into this song, and really pulls out like all the stops. You see all of the sides of The Weeknd that you really enjoy, from the dark to the more sing-songy to a little bit of the rap kind of sound and more punchy bass. And I think that this is the perfect song to really encompass the album, because it does kind of have the 3 parts in it for me. And then Until I Bleed Out, it's a good closer. I think that it was a little weak lyrically for me. I almost think it could have been a continuation of After Hours to kind of close out the album, in one song. Obviously for label reasons and maybe artistic reasons, The Weeknd doesn't want to make 4 12-minute songs for an album like I seem to want him to. But I think Until I Bleed Out was a little bit weaker lyrically, but I think it was a good close to the album, which kind of leads into the bonus tracks, which were added shortly after the album came out, which was kind of what I was going to be talking about next. I thought it was interesting, first off, that After Hours does have its story, and we've been talking about when we've kind of been analyzing track by track that it does kind of follow a story and the songs can be grouped in our eyes. And I think in a lot of other people's eyes and ears, these songs can be grouped together. And I thought it was interesting that when the bonus tracks were added for the deluxe edition, they were added at the end. So it was almost like a continuation of the story. I think that it wasn't necessarily needed. I think Nothing Compares was the best, and it for me it almost feels like a better final track to the album than Until I Bleed Out. But the other 2 after this, I think, were not needed necessarily. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the tracks, but what are your guys' thoughts on deluxe editions? Do you think it was an afterthought, or was this calculated? Did The Weeknd know that he wanted to do this after the fact, or did he just think people were hungry for more and had some things in his back pocket? Maybe Arsel?
God, yeah, that's an interesting conversation. I think deluxe albums it's a varying degree of whether they're okay or I think are fine or not. I think this 3 songs for a deluxe edition totally fine. I don't think there was any scumminess involved with that, but I think there's some there's other people who drop quote unquote deluxe albums and after they dropped the original version, and the deluxe album is like straight up another album. Like it's a second album, which is so weird to me. Like just, and it's just a marketing ploy and a sales ploy to like raise the sales of one album. It's just a silly thing, which I don't think The Weeknd's like intention was that. Even though I'm sure that helped him out, but like it's just 3 songs. I think these songs are good, but I don't think like they were necessary. Like Final Lullaby, which is the very last song, it feels like a more stereotypical closing track, which actually makes me like it less, funny enough, because I like how it does kind of end abruptly on Until I Bleed Out. Like the end is kind of sudden, and I really like that artistically. So I don't know. I think these songs are middle of the line. I think they're okay. I don't think they detract from the album, but I also don't think they add to the album. They're kind of just there for me, and I don't. I think I do think it's weird that they were put at the end, because I think Until I Bleed Out is the best way to end the album. But like I said, I don't think they add or detract at the end of the day. Andrew?
Yeah, I feel like the deluxe album was just kind of just The Weeknd putting like maybe like a cherry on top of the album, just giving us one last little taste. I'm kind of indifferent on these. I think Nothing Compares is a lot better than the other two.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean that I don't have a problem with deluxe edition albums really, as long as they're not like. I mean I don't know. I feel like they fit in well on this. They don't fit in well on some other artists, depending on what the deluxe edition includes. Because a lot of deluxe editions kind of take on like Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar, for example. Like here's Swimming Pools remixed with Jay-Z. Okay, I don't need Jay-Z on Swimming Pools. Like that song is fine on its own. I like deluxe albums where it's adding songs instead of kind of remixing or editing existing songs, just because I feel like it kind of adds more to be like, okay, here's a whole new song, instead of like, oh, here's a song I probably won't like it as much as the original, stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, they're obviously these 3 aren't my favorites. I guess I already kind of went over my favorites on the album.
You want to just
After Hours being my favorite?
Yeah, I was just
So After Hours I put as my favorite, like I said earlier. Snow Child is my least favorite, like I said earlier. So maybe Arcel, what are your thoughts on? Not to steal your thunder, but
oh yeah, no.
What is your favorite and what is your least favorite song on After Hours by Abel Tesfaye?
Least favorite song, Scared to Live, definitely. And favorite song is I'm gonna say it's a tie between After Hours and Escape from LA. What about you, John?
I would say that Snow Child and Scared to Live are tied with me for my least favorite. And then favorite is hard because in terms of like quality of the song, I think After Hours is my favorite, but the one that I always come back to and continue to come back to is Blinding Lights. And that's, I mean, if you're to go off of amount of play time or plays, Blinding Lights would be my favorite, but I think artistically and to really kind of put the album in one song, the song After Hours is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I agree with that.
But going off of our favorite songs, what would you guys think would be your favorite Weeknd album? I mean, this for me, I don't think that After Hours was his best work for me personally, just because I do like the more upbeat. I almost like The Weeknd when he raps a little bit more, even though he's more of an R&B artist, and I think that is where he shines. I personally really like the upbeat, kind of punchy bass, him talking about, being a baller a little bit more. But I think that if I were to rank The Weeknd's albums, I would say, or his body's work at least, Trilogy is number 1 for me, obviously. I mean, this is a 30 plus song work. It's not an album per se. It was 3 mixtapes, but I mean, this is gonna be looked at, I think, as his best work in the future. Starboy for me was my second favorite, just because it does kind of have the more rap kind of style in it, and I find myself coming back to Starboy a lot more. Kissland for me is third. Kissland is so unique, and it's got its own style that I don't think any other body of work from The Weeknd has encompassed. It's totally different for me from the other albums, and I really like that. After Hours for me is fourth. I really like how cinematic, like you said, Ursel, this album is. But for me, I don't find myself coming back to a lot of the songs. I would say that half the songs I really enjoy and half the songs I hardly listen to. Whereas, like Kissland, I'll listen to each and every song in the album with maybe 2 that I don't enjoy too much. Starboy, I like all but a couple. And Trilogy, I like all but a couple, but there's the most songs in Trilogy. Beauty Behind the Madness is fifth for me. There are too many stinkers on it. And then My Dear Melancholy would be last for me, just because it's his shortest work, and I think half the songs are good, half are bad, but obviously there's only 6. So maybe Andrew, did you want to talk, or Arsel actually, did you want to talk on your ranking of his body's work?
What would you rate it, John? The album?
Oh, well, I would probably give After Hours an 8.5. So ranking it as my 4th favorite album from him is not saying much, because I love The Weeknd. I mean, I think that all of his albums so far have been incredible. He's one of my favorite artists. So an 8.5 is not really saying much. After Hours has a story more than any other piece of work from him so far. For me, that's just not as much what I go for when listening to music, though.
Okay, so going into my ranking of this album, I think it's honestly one of the better Weeknd albums. I think that as a body of work, it's really well thought out. I think that, which is a different, he definitely tried to make it a cohesive album that I think he didn't do with Starboy and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Beauty Behind the Madness. But I think this is definitely one of the better Weeknd albums. If I had to do a ranking, I would say number 1 is Trilogy. I think that's one of like my favorite albums ever. I think that's a masterpiece, especially for the fact that it's 30 songs long. And then number 2, I'm actually going to put After Hours. I think After Hours is his best studio album. I think it's got a cohesiveness that you can find in something like Kissland, but it also has this he's a lot more confident in his sound, I feel like, compared to Kissland. He's a lot more confident here. He really goes into this 80s synth based style, and he really knows he finds ways to make it interesting. You have like the liquid drums in Too Late, you have or not Too Late, in Hardest to Love. You have some of the darker, moodier music with After Hours and Escape from LA or Heartless, and you have some of the more upbeat styles of like In Your Eyes or Save Your Tears. And there's so much diversity with the sonics in this album, but it also feels very cohesive at the end of the day, and there's a style that he really owns with this album. So number 2 for After Hours. 3, I would probably put Kissland. 4, I would put I'd probably put Starboy. 5, I would put Beauty Behind the Madness, because both of those albums I think have some straight stinkers. And then I'm gonna put I'm gonna put My Dear Melancholy last because I just think it's kind of an aimless EP that like, I still don't know really what his intentions were at the end of the day with that project. So that's my ranking of him, and if I had to rate it, I would probably I'm gonna give After Hours I'm gonna give it a 9. I think it's a fantastic album. Or you know what? I'm thinking actually, I'm gonna give it a 9.3. I'm gonna be a little weird here. I'm gonna give it a 9.3.
I like it.
Yeah. I think that. Gosh, I think he really knocked it out of the park with this album. I think some of the track listing choices are weird how he structured it, and I think there's a few kind of songs that were a little bit of a miscalculation, like Scared to Live, but otherwise I think this is an amazing album, and I thought this was album of the year for 2020. So 9.3 for me, and that was my ranking. What about you, Andrew?
So ranking, I feel like it's kind of like, kind of cheating, but Trilogy at number 1. The only reason I feel like it's kind of cheating is just because, it's 3 mixtapes put in one. It's a massive album, basically like the thing that started him. So then number 2, I would actually put After Hours as well. I thought this album is really well balanced, and I thought, a lot of the stuff that happened in this album, I thought everything was produced well. It's kind of like, it's almost like, kind of like the peak of, hopefully not the peak of his career, but like he's getting to that point where, he's like almost completely mastered his craft,
I just want to say this. Like, I think this album, like, when it all said and done, like, I think this might be the album that he's remembered for because it's, more mainstream than something like Trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And then, so I put it at number 2. I put Kissland at number 3 just because Kissland, the memes around it add to it a little bit. And then Starboy at 4, My Dear Melancholy at 5, Beauty Behind the Madness at 6. And I just want to be very clear, this is my opinions on Beauty Behind the Madness is relative to The Weeknd, not to music in general. Music in general, it's a top tier album. The Weeknd, it's a stinky, wet fart. I think if he missed on any album, it's definitely that album he missed on. And then I would rank After Hours a 9.5 just because I give Trilogy a straight 10, and it would be hard for me to say that After Hours is a 10 knowing what Trilogy is.
And actually, you know what? Like, just to make it a little easier, like, because I think we've been going by like 0.5 increments. I'll go ahead and give it a 9.5 as well because I think I feel comfortable giving it that score, and I think we've all been going by 0.5 increments. So yeah, you and me both. Andrew,
yeah.
9.5.
Yeah.
So score to.
Let's
see, 9.5, 9. Yeah, do a little addition, a little calculus on the ControllerCast today.
9.5 plus 8.5 divided by 3. 9.2.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate, and I feel like that's a good kind of reflection on how this album was in general received by the public. I feel like a lot of people, I feel like everybody can appreciate how good it is. It's just kind of, how it stacks up compared to his other music and how you feel about, certain tones and stuff.
And Andrew, I think that's like a perfect segue for, just the general consensus about this album and like the Grammys.
Yeah. So I feel like, I guess we'll kind of mesh this last thing. So, where does he go from here? Like I said earlier, it's kind of, I feel like he's either approaching the peak or, I hope for, as a fan, that this isn't the peak. I hope it, obviously I hope it continues to get better from here, but I feel like he's definitely getting to the top, like I said, mastering his craft. The Grammys, all my homies hate the Grammys. We all hate the Grammys now. I'm not going to go too far into it just because I could do a whole episode on why I hate the Grammys, for various events that have happened in the past. Yeah, the scammies. I just don't understand how you can have, the top album of the year, the top song of the year, the top, arguably the best performances of the year, even though, last year during COVID there were no real concerts. It was more just, based off music videos. But, I mean, man, you can't, there is no way that The Weeknd at his peak cannot get a Grammy nom. I mean, that's absurd, and I think he really took that to heart when he goes, I'm not letting my recording label submit anything to the Grammys ever again. This is, finally having an artist as big as The Weeknd, speaking out. Not that other, artists haven't spoken out. I mean, I feel like it's kind of, just not to go too far off course, but it's kind of interesting, the Grammys. You got Beyonce, who broke the record for most Grammys by a single female artist this year. She has no Artist of the Year or Album of the Year noms. They're all other various awards. I feel like the Grammys, obviously a lot of it's for ratings, because I feel like they could probably just give the awards without having a whole, God, what was it, 4.5 hours this year? It was an insanely long, event. And I feel like the validity of it being criticized, they can either take it one of two directions. They can either build on it, or they can just stay on their same, shitty ways. And, I have a lot of mixed thoughts on the Grammys. I think it's a good place to see people, perform their songs, especially with the year we've had with no concerts. But I think The Weeknd himself, I think he's been kind of teasing a new project. I'd be interested to see what kind of tone it takes, because I feel like After Hours was kind of a culmination of everything he's done so far up to this point, kind of meshed into one album, which is insanely cool from, kind of a fan service perspective, but also it paid off dividends in the general music consensus, because, with the year we had, I keep going back to, the COVID year, but this song coming out when it did, I feel it kind of got like, kind of the same thing that Animal Crossing ended up having in the video game world, where it's like, it came out at the perfect time. You have right a week after like major nationwide lockdowns come in, you have a full length album that drops, which is that's an extremely well done album. And it's kind of like, like I said, the Animal Crossing thing, where they came out at the perfect time, and I think he was definitely able to capitalize on this, and I hope he can ride out the success of this album in the future, build on it, and create even greater content in the future.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that The Weeknd got snubbed at the Grammys. I mean, he had what was his best year, honestly, of all time. I mean, he was a dominant artist in the industry this year. Going back to his Billboard thing, I mean, no artist has ever done what he did with Blinding Lights, being in the top 10 for over a year. And like you said, Andrew, it was kind of a perfect storm with, one of the biggest artists of our generation dropping one of the new albums during such a difficult time, and during a time where we all, had a lot of time on our hands and were locked in. I think that it was just insane to not even like invite him. Was he even invited to the Grammys?
I think he was invited to perform, if I'm thinking correctly, but I think he declined it, obviously, because he got snubbed on everything.
Right. It's just, it's insane. I think, like, for sure Abel is doing a good thing by not submitting his work to the Grammys going forward. But I think that in general it'll be kind of hard for him to top this. Like Arcel said, I mean, this is going to be probably an album that he's remembered for, and where he goes from here, I mean, from a fan perspective, I think we would want to see more of the same. But I think from an artist's perspective, The Weeknd's going to want to try something new, considering this album was kind of a culmination of everything he's done thus far. But it'll be interesting to see what he does in the future. Arcel, did you want to talk more on the Grammys and maybe where he goes?
Yeah, I think the Grammys are whack. I think this is just another showcase of it. There's just no way in any angle or perspective that you take the music that released last year. If you look at it critically, if you look at commercially, if you look at how it impacted the culture, there's no way that After Hours would not be in any one of those conversations, or Blinding Lights or whatever. And the fact that it didn't get a nomination for anything, when if it was in those categories, it would probably win like a lot of the major awards, is telling about how off base and how detached the Grammys are from reality. When, you know, like come on, really, the Billie Eilish song won like Song or Record of the Year? Really? I haven't even heard that song. Like, and there's some really strange nominations, but whatever. Like, we all know the Grammys are whack. That's not anything new. I think for him moving forward, though, as an artist, look, I think he really perfected his craft. I think this was a perfect blend between a lot of things. And with Blinding Lights, he literally got to like the peak. He got to Mount Everest. Like, he has one of the biggest songs ever. Like, I think know when you've really perfected something. And I don't know, I don't think I want him for his next album to try to like repeat what he's done in the past. I would love to see his next album get really kind of return to something like Kissland, where it's really experimental and darker, like maybe more, you know, kind of back to you know, a lot more personal, a little more autobiographical about him. And I think I would really just want something experimental, something sonically challenging, where you really have to, you know, you pick, like, you know, I'm going to kind of reference one of my favorite albums here, Blonde. Blonde is an album that you can, like, you listen to it, you know, after so many years, and it's such a complex listen. It's such a complex album. You pick up on so many different things because it's so unorthodox, where sometimes, you know, even listening to it years down the line, your 10th listen might feel like your first listen because you're just picking up on so many different things every time you hear it. I want something that has depth. I think this album had depth, and I think he can do something even more out there and more creative and really push the boundaries of his music. So I think that's probably a good place to wrap things up. I think for the most part, we all really enjoyed this album. I know, John, it was a little bit of a disappointment for you, but hey, we all have different opinions, right?
Exactly. I mean, I'm just about the bangers,
Yeah.
but artistically, it's incredible.
But the ControllerCast ranking sitting at a 9.2, and we will see you guys as always next Sunday. I just want to throw a heads up. We after next week's episode, so the following week, we're actually all going to be going on vacation. So that's probably going to be a week where we skip because we're all going to be traveling. So you probably no episode that week, but just want to give a heads up to everyone. So everyone, thank you for listening. Please share if you enjoyed it. You know, subscribe to whatever platform that you listen to your podcast on. Share it on socials. Share it with your friends. Keep supporting us. Listen on if you can listen, always listen on a podcast platform. That's where it helps us out the most. And just keep spreading the word and keep on listening. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
See you next week.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
See ya.
you.